Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Joshua Shrum. He is a very talented steward, very knowledgeable.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. This is one of those podcasts where I listen to every episode. I love what he's putting out there.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. Josh Shrum.
Parcels of Knowledge. Does a fantastic job with that podcast.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.
Good morning and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, the podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Today, I am recording at midnight. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm recording at midnight. And it's because pretty soon I'll be going into work. Probably around 2:30 I'm going to leave and finish up these case files. I'm probably going to have to send about 150 over to Step B. But, I know you guys have missed me. I didn't record last Wednesday. But, of course, I know you like to hear from the cream of the crop.
The cream of the crop. Nobody does it better.
And good news for you. Today on the 6/13, well, technically I recorded it on Sunday. He does this weird thing where, for whatever reason, he sits on an episode for days and days, but he's releasing it today on Wednesday. I'll be on 6/13. I had an interview with Bill Kriebel. It was pretty good. If you want, you can go over there and check it out. But sorry about last week. I did not get to do a Wrecking Crew Wednesday because I've been doing a ton of hours off the clock. So far, it's only been about 25. Today's my anniversary, so of course I slacked off again and didn't get enough done. But I'm going to make up for it by making sure to get back at it today. But yeah, like you guys already know, today is Wrecking Crew Wednesday. Yeah, that's Wrecking Crew Wednesday, and we have grown in numbers. Yeah, that's right, 38 members. We got one more member. If you don't know what the Wrecking Crew is, it is my Patreon. That is a system where we do value for value, and you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/parcels of knowledge, and you can become a Wrecking Crew member. And there's a couple different benefits for being a Wrecking Crew member. You can help pick the Wednesday topic, and on the first Wednesday of each month, we will also have a roundtable where you can get on, talk about the subject selected, say whatever you have to say. So if you think this show provides you value, you're welcome to provide me value right back. And give me anywhere between $1 and $50 a month to become a member. Without further ado, let's recognize these badass individuals. Rick Steiner, E.R., Tom Perry, Philip DeGilio, Chris Angeloff, Amy Tyvan, Ryan Ackers, Edmund DeVore, Miziel Guzman, Paul Saranowski, Jamie Gregory, Neil Beckman, Shannon Mossbarger, Kenneth Grigsby, Benjamin Shellhaas, Joni Weber, the Allentown Architect, Self-Care, G. Whiskey, Daniel Pitts, Mark Allen Kennedy II, Jason Munn, David Grosskopf, Unfortunate VP, Abraham Askar, Corey Walton, Tyler Christopher, Lino Miranda, Anthony Arthur Robinson, Angel, the Activist, Obi Tynes, Roxy B, Kathleen Rocky Connors, Kerbin Franklin, Omi, Alan Rossi, John Murphy, not that one, and our new member, Richie Ray. It's good to have you, Richie Ray. You guys are badass. But without further ado, let's move on. Kyle Incencio is running for Region 6 NBA candidacy. And we're going to have him on Saturday. So if you have any questions to submit to him, submit them to rosevillewreckingball@yahoo.com. With the exception of one interview, I have asked every candidate every question submitted. And that one interview was due to the fact that the interviewee limited it to 1 hour interview, first of all. And a ton of questions were sent in. So unless an unusual thing happens again, every question sent in will be answered by the candidate. And like I would like to remind you that this show is dedicated on Saturdays to having the most open and fair election process that we can possibly have. And what that entails is getting to know what each candidate is about. It doesn't matter what party affiliation they have, what slate, whatever. I'd like to have them on, and it's their opportunity to either sink or swim. That's why I asked the listeners to submit questions. And the idea is let's be transparent about who each individual is. If you have a criteria for who you want to be in that particular position, feel free to ask that question, and we'll find out if that fits your needs. So, the Wrecking Crew Wednesday, normally the Wrecking Crew picks the topic. The topic has been chosen, and that is management's arbitrary and often unrealistic expectations for office time. Throughout the years, Postal Service management has attempted many times to devise a system or a tool that projects the letter carrier's daily workload. Believers in these systems or tools think they can take a mathematical formula and simply plug in some mail volume numbers, arbitrarily select a street time for the day, and apply some non-existent work standards to determine what time a carrier will leave the office and what time they will return from the street. Their goal is to determine how much downtime the carrier has in order to pivot off another route. And oftentimes, the reason why they want you to pivot is because historical data can be used for route adjustment purposes, and they're trying to get their foot in the door for eliminating as many routes as possible. So what this does is it conditions the carrier to take off another assignment within 8, and if they do it often enough, they can say, hey, wait a second, those routes are not 8 hours. Let's do a route adjustment. And oftentimes the carriers will play right into that issue. So don't forget, you can't spell pivot without OT. That's overtime. Do not fall into the trap. It might be easier for you for that day because you don't want to argue with management, but ultimately you're going to pay the price if you decide to take pivots and rush your route in order to get that pivot done. In addition to using such time projection systems, management often occasionally just pick arbitrary time allotments out of the air and attempt to apply such numbers to a letter carrier's office and street time, and then they expect them to meet those times. One recent application arbitrarily limited letter carriers to no more than 1 hour of office time in the morning, and then it became 40 minutes, and then it became 30 minutes. So the more you give them, the more they take. No matter how much mail they have to case or how much other office work they must perform, the carriers are being instructed to be on the street no later than 1 hour after they begin their tour, or in some cases 40 minutes, or in some cases 30 minutes. Another arbitrary time allotment by managers limits letter carriers to a predetermined amount of time in the evening, usually 5 minutes, to perform their required PM office duties. That is absolutely not acceptable. A blanket 5-minute predetermination is not okay. Now, whether management's using a time projection tool or simply applying arbitrary time allotments for letter carriers to adhere to, Such ways to determine office time often do not allow for fixed office time to perform such necessary daily functions as vehicle inspections, stand-up talks, retrieving mail from the throwback case, withdrawing mail, and retrieving or signing for accountable items, to name just a few morning office duties. If your office has an office break, that time is most likely not factored into these projections or allotted times either. Arbitrary projections and time allotments certainly do not take into consideration how much actual work needs to be performed and the actual time allowed for each of these office functions. Letter carriers are required to perform certain tasks in the morning before leaving for the route, and in the afternoon upon returning to the office. Management's projections or arbitrary time allotments are not the sole determinant of a carrier's leaving or return time or daily workload. Using a time projection or applying an arbitrary amount of time does not change the letter carrier's reporting requirements as outlined in Section 131 of Handbook M41 and the supervisor's scheduling responsibilities outlined in Section 122 of Handbook M39, or the letter carrier's and the supervisor's responsibilities contained in Section 28 of Handbook M41, which is basically the 3996. The letter carrier's reporting requirements outlined in Section 131.4 of Handbook M41 read in relevant part as follows. It is your responsibility to inform management when you are of the opinion that you will be unable to case all mail distributed to the route, perform other required duties, and leave on schedule, or when you will be unable to complete delivery of all mail. Inform management of this well in advance of the scheduled leaving time and not later than immediately following the final receipt of mail. Management will instruct you what to do. Complete applicable items on Form 3996. If overtime or auxiliary assistance is authorized in the office or on the street. Report on Form 1571, all mail undelivered. Please do this. Please do this. I really need you to do this. No carrier's doing this. We need to get you to fill out them 1571s, please. It helps us prove so many cases. Including all mail distributed to the route, but not cased and taken out for delivery. Estimate the number of pieces of mail. Do not curtail or eliminate any scheduled delivery or collection trip unless authorized by a manager, in which case you must record all facts on Form 1571. Before you leave the office, enter on Form 1571 the mail curtailed. When you return, add any mail which was not delivered and which was returned to the office. Follow any special local procedures set up to identify errors and corrective actions for mail returned because it was out of sequence. Section 28 of Handbook M41 outlines the procedures for letter carriers to fill out PS Form 3996 and to submit it to the supervisor when a letter carrier estimates that the daily workload cannot be completed in the allotted time. It also details the requirements of the supervisor in item L of the form. A complete explanation of Section 28, PS Form 3996, and related USPS supervisor responsibilities can be found in the Letter Carrier Resource Guide, available at nalc.org. Section 122.33 of Handbook M39 requires a supervisor to provide a letter carrier with a PS Form 3996 upon request, once the supervisor has been verbally informed why the request is being made. It reads in relevant part, the employee upon request will be provided a Form 3996 after the supervisor has been verbally informed as to the reason for the request. The employee shall not be denied the form, and upon request, a duplicate of the completed form will be provided to the employee. Article 41, Section 3G of the National Agreement reinforces the carrier's rights and management's responsibilities related to PS Form 3996. It also adds an extra stipulation that management must promptly respond to them. The employer will advise the carrier who has properly submitted a 3996 of the disposition of the request promptly after review of the circumstances at the time. Upon request, a duplicate copy Completed Form 3996 and Form 1571, report of undelivered mail, will be provided to the carrier. Letter carriers are responsible for estimating the amount of time it will take to complete their assigned duties, and management has a responsibility to manage that workload within the confines of the handbook language. In attempting to meet bogus time projections of arbitrary time allotments, some required office duties are at times ignored or overlooked. Before I go into the office duties that are often ignored or overlooked, I do want to tell you that during these conversations about the 96, you do not have to say that it can be done in 8. Oftentimes, management will say, hey, your instructions are you got to do all the mail and get it within 8. You're being denied. At the end of the day, stay calm. Make sure you tell your manager, look, I'm going to do the best I can, and I think I'm right, but we'll see what happens. And then when you hit the street, as soon as possible, send them a scanner message saying, hey, by the way, I started working the mail, and I have determined that my original projection is accurate. What are my instructions? That way you cannot do it as soon as you can, because you can't be told, hey, you didn't inform us before 3. Because when you hit the street at 10 a.m., that is way before 3. And that's all you got to do. Just ask them for further instructions. And I wouldn't even call them, because oftentimes they try and talk you down and you can't even, you can't put that on record. So text them. That's always a record. Take a picture of the text. Don't use your cell phone. Use the device that they give you. Article 41 does say they have to supply all necessary tools, and they do. That is the scanner. You can do two-way communication with the scanner. If they don't check those messages, that's on them. In fact, I'd say it's a bold thing to say this, but it's probably an Article 41 issue. Not 41, I'm sorry, Article 14, which is safety and health. Because if they don't check those messages, that could be your only way to communicate with them. What if you lost your phone or it doesn't have service? How are you going to tell management you're stuck or need assistance? Anyway, oftentimes some of the office duties are overlooked. One of them is vehicle inspections. Vehicle inspections are often overlooked office duties. Letter carriers should be afforded time to properly inspect their delivery vehicle. According to USPS Notice 76, expanded vehicle safety check, every day before operating the vehicle. Vehicle inspections should be performed as soon as possible after clocking in to allow letter carriers to promptly report vehicle deficiencies to management. These requirements can be found in Section 832 and 842 of Handbook M41, which state, inspect vehicle as described on Notice 76, expanded vehicle safety check, for deficiencies, body damage, or inoperable items. See Section 842 for reporting defects. Driver must A. report all mechanical defects or failures and major body damage on Form 4565, vehicle repair tag, as soon as noted, and B. immediately turn in the completed form to a dispatcher or manager. Minor body damage can sometimes await repair until the next regular inspection and need not be reported more than once. Section 922.51F of Handbook M41 indicates how the time for vehicle inspection is credited on PS Form 1838C, Carrier's Count of Mail. Letter carrier routes worksheet during the route inspection process. The minimum time allowance for performing vehicle inspections is 3 minutes. However, a proper vehicle inspection may take longer. As indicated in Section 922.51, this inspection should be performed as part of the morning office duties and should receive office time credit accordingly. Notice 76 specifies that the letter carriers should perform items 16 and 17 on the list with assistance from another person if possible. Vehicle inspections are an important part of maintaining letter carrier safety and should not be overlooked. Old mail. Letter carriers should also be afforded the proper time of office time to process hold mail. May be held for many reasons, including customers being temporarily away or on a 10-day hold in anticipation of processing a change of address. The procedures for processing hold mail vary based on the type of mail and the reasons for the hold. These procedures are explained in depth in Chapter 2 of Handbook M41. Whatever the reason, mail is being held. Letter carriers should process this mail on office time. Handbook provisions instruct management to have letter carriers retain hold mail at the carrier case. This language is found in Section 117 of Handbook M39. Hold mail instruct the carriers to place hold mail in a central location only when space is not available at the carrier's case. Letter carriers must also retrieve accountable items and special services on office time. Accountable items are keys, postage due, customs duty, and special services mail. Letter carriers receive these items in the morning from the accountable clerk. These items are handled in accordance with Section 261 of Handbook M41. Accountable items are keys, postage due, customs duty, and special services mail. Generally, carriers are required to call at the finance cage for accountable items. They may be called in groups by call of the route numbers or by passing a paddle. See paddle system. At some offices, the items are delivered at the carrier's case. Sorry. This handbook language makes clear the processing of these items should be credited to office time. Letter carriers should ensure that they are on office time when they handle accountable items, whether in the morning before leaving for the route or in the afternoon upon returning. Rest breaks. I can't tell you how many times my carriers in the morning, basically on their own accord, against my wishes, are skipping their office breaks. It is plain idiotic. We are losing 10 minutes of time every day. And I guarantee you they're skipping their street breaks, which is ridiculous too. That's what I'm talking about. People will do those things in order to get pivots done for management, just to avoid a little bit of tension each day, which I get it. Not everyone likes confrontation, and management gets confrontational. But there is no excuse to skip your break. City letter carriers are entitled to 2 paid 10-minute rest breaks during each 8-hour work period. One of these rest breaks may be taken in the office on office time. If your local branch has chosen this option, the negotiated 2 10-minute break periods are required minimum. Longer breaks may be established by past practice or by LMOU. Letter carriers are required to take the negotiated breaks. Page 4128 explains this requirement. 4128 of the National Agreement, the JCAM. It says that National Arbitrator Britain ruled that the Postal Service must ensure that all employees stop working during an office break. Contractual breaks must be observed and cannot be waived by employees. If your branch has chosen an office break, letter carriers must take this break on office time. During the route inspection process, letter carriers receive credit for this office break on PS Form 1838C, and it is included in the office time evaluation for each route. Letter carriers should never skip their negotiated rest breaks, whether they are taken in the office or on the street. PM office duties. We do have if you're interested in a template for curtailment of PM office duties, please contact me. But in some locations, supervisors instruct letter carriers to complete their assigned PM office duties within a predetermined amount of time. Oftentimes, afternoon office duties can be unclear for city letter carriers. Section 4 of Handbook M41 specifies what duties letter carriers should perform as PM office functions after clocking back in from the street. The supervisor's responsibilities can be found in Handbook M39. Those duties include the following: office work when carriers return from route. The carrier unit manager must observe and direct the carrier activity when carriers return from the route. Observe such things as: see that carriers promptly clock in to return to office. See that clerks are available to check in accountable items as efficiently and promptly as possible. As indicated, handbook provisions state carriers should clock back into the office immediately after unloading their vehicles and before disposition of collected mail. This is indicated in Section 42 of Handbook M41, Disposition of Collected Mail. Place the mail collected on designated table or in receptacles. Sorting of outgoing collection mail and other end-of-day activities should be conducted on office time. Letter carriers also should return accountable items to the clearing clerk for proper clearance while on office time, as indicated in Section 43 of Handbook M41 and Section 127C of Handbook M39. See the following sections of M41 for detailed explanations of PM office duties pertaining to accountable items. 43, 431, 432, 433, 434, 435, and 436. Processing of undelivered mail should also be performed on office time, whether this mail is processed in the morning or in the afternoon upon return from the route. Section 44 of the Handbook M41 expands this requirement. Processing undelivered mail. Follow procedures listed in Part 24 to process forwardable and undeliverable mail, and that you didn't process before leaving for the office, and that you picked up on the route after processing. Place this mail in a throwback case as explained in Part 24. After return from your trip, obtain PS Form 1571 from Unit Manager. Add any mail which was not delivered but was returned to the office. Sign the form and give it to a Unit Manager. There is no set time in which the above duties must be performed. These duties are equally as important as morning office duties or street duties. Letter carriers are still responsible for estimating the amount of time it will take to complete their assigned duties. Likewise, management still has a responsibility to manage that workload within the confines of the handbook language. If letter carriers are allowed to perform office duties, or if they're not allowed and they're not afforded adequate time to perform these duties, a shop steward or branch officer should be notified so they can investigate and, if appropriate, file a grievance. There is many things we can file a grievance for as it relates to this topic, and many different things we could talk about as it relates to this topic. But as this has been long enough, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you're really interested in hearing more about this subject, please let me know. There's also Jamie Gregory. He took my episode 1 in my letter carrier route guide and developed it into something that's beautiful and something that has taken a shape way bigger than something I could have created. So if you want a copy of that as well, feel free to message me and I'll send it to you. Or maybe later today, I'll get with Jamie Gregory and see if we can Google Drive it on the Parcels of Knowledge Facebook so that anyone can see it. Hopefully, you learned something valuable today. And as always, have a good day.
If these guys are getting educated, we will be in big trouble.
Management's been weighing you down like a bag of wet catalogs, but you don't gotta take it. You strap on the elbow of education, dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now. The Grievous Genius and the Roseville Wrecking Ball doing amazing work.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.